An important conversation with my friend Ryan Michler from Order of Man. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive, and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 78 of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, the host, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Clark Fork, Idaho. How you guys doing? Thanks a bunch for being here. I'm really excited about this episode, and I'm going to get into the details with that here in just a minute. I got a few things to cover that you guys won't want to miss. So let's start with the bugle tubes. I've had a bunch of, I made a post the other day because we've got, I know everybody's excited because September's coming and I can barely sleep at night. I'm getting ready. Hope you guys are doing all your pre-September things that, for those of you that are going out in September for the, archery elk season. I can't wait. So there has been, I made a post, getting back to that, that I got this new Phelps Game Call, the metal bugle tube they came out with. It's like new technology. It's a new thing. And everybody's like, oh, I'd love to hear the difference. And so I've got the tubes here. Now, I want to put this disclaimer out here that every time I bugle through a microphone, it kind of sounds like I'm in a tin can or something. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. I don't really know how to change that. Because I have a pretty good microphone here, but anyway, the point being, it's not going to sound like it is when you are out in the woods calling in elk, but I do want to do a quick comparison. So the comparison for these two bugle tubes, the first one is going to be my go-to bugle tube that I've been using for a couple of years, the Phelps Game Call Renegade, which is kind of like the Dirk Durham signature bugle tube, and it's a great tube. I've called in a bunch of elk with it, so. And what I'm going to do is just like a locator bugle. And for those of you going out for your first season, that you can't kill an elk unless you locate one, right? And so I want to talk to you about that for just a quick second. Like when you're out there and you come across a drainage that's deep, it's dark, it's steep, it's got a lot of timber in it. Depending on, where you're hunting, this is not going to apply to somebody maybe in New Mexico or parts of Utah or some areas of Wyoming, and including Idaho. But for the rest of us that are hunting the timber country, the dark timber, when you come across that drainage and your initial thought when you see that drainage is, holy shit, that thing is deep, steep, and I don't know how I'd ever get an elk out of there. I might as well take a fork and go down there and eat it down there. So that's where you want to bugle into, okay? And this is what I do, and I elicit a lot of responses this way by finding these dark, deep drainages, these holes, if you will, and that's where I elicit a lot of responses from bulls. And so the point of this is to show you this is my go-to locator bugle, and the difference between the Phelps Renegade Dirk Durham signature bugle tube and this metal tube. And I think for, just from what I've been using, the metal tube is going to be a little bit heavier to carry, but it gives you this added volume that you're not going to get out of the other plastic tubes. Do you need it to kill an elk? No. But if you want to get that higher pitched resonating volume, this thing's pretty cool, and I was leery at first, but I bought one just to try it out, and I was leery. So let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scoot the mic back just a touch, and I'm going to point my bugle tube in both times in the exact same location. So again, this is the Phelps Renegade, the Dirk Durham signature bugle tube, and here's a locator bugle on it. Let's see what you think. All right. So that's what I'm doing. I've gotten more elk to respond back to me with that exact bugle, that sound. Now I'm going to do it again, but with the Phelps metal bugle tube. See if you can tell the difference. Again, that... It's not like it's this crazy big difference, but what the difference is, and I don't know if the mic is going to be able to pick it up, is you're going to get that tonal high pitch that just tend to make elk think, man, I'm going to talk back to that guy. And it's just a little higher, and I'm pretty excited to take it out. If you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about it. So there you go. There's the comparison between the two. I've been thinking about doing a video, but I'm like all over the place right now and don't have a set time where I'm going to be able to do that for you guys. But before I get into the interview part of this show, to leave out the normal commercial ad roll, I'm going to announce them now. And the reason I'm doing that now is because hunting season is fast approaching. For many of you, I know there's some speed goat hunts that have opened up, and some other things out there that are coming. Utah, I know you got elk season is going to be opening here in a few days. Yeah, so good luck for you guys. They're going to be super hot on that, but good luck. So, and keep us posted here at the Western Huntsman. You guys get an elk down, send those pictures over to jim@thewesternhuntsman.com, and I will post them on our social media with your permission. And by you sending them to me via email, I will assume I have your permission to post those and congratulate you, because it's going to be a big deal. It's a big deal to tag out on an elk. So, that said, let's roll right into, guys. If you need gear, now is the time to get it. And the gear that we offer here, I've got some discounts for you. So first and foremost, since we were just dealing with Phelps Game Calls is the oldest sponsor on the Western Huntsman podcast. I love this company. It's got a great company story and fantastic products calling in, whether we're talking elk, they've got deer calls, they've got predator calls, they've got waterfowl calls, all the calls that you can think of. And they're all available right now at PhelpsGameCalls.com. Use the promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off. Next up, I want to talk to you guys about boots. I've mentioned this before. I am somewhat of an authority when it comes to boots because of my history, and I love a good set of boots. There are a few things that you guys need to make sure, if you're serious about hunting, that you don't chintz out on when it comes to gear, and that is boots. Boots is one of those pieces of gear that you guys really need to make sure you don't skimp out on. There's a lot of great boots out there. For me, I've worn a lot of them. You guys know, if you listen to this show, I am a Hoffman boot guy. Hoffman is a local North Idaho company for me. I know the owner. It's very much based on a relationship. But I also did tell Jim Hoffman that if I didn't like the boots, I would not have them on the show. Well, he didn't have to worry about that because I love these boots. You guys know it. I've been using these Hoffman boots, and I like the 8-inch Explorer, and they've also got them in the 8-inch, so it just depends on how high you like them up your ankle, but excellent traction, excellent waterproofing, excellent warranty, first-class, world-class company. Just a great boot all around, and use promo code, if you go to HoffmanBoots.com, use promo code Huntsman10, and that is all caps lock for 10% off, save you a little bit of money. Scree gear. Scree is, if you guys are needing to re-outfit with new camo, this high-performance stuff, it will definitely take care of your needs. They've got everything from complete layering systems to cold weather to mild climate, early season type kind of stuff. The Scree gear has, for me, without having to drop a small fortune or take out a second mortgage, been better than the stuff that I have dropped a small fortune on in the past. And so I'm a firm believer in this Scree gear. Go to ScreeGear.com and use the promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off. That's my one oddball promo code, by the way. Hoffman Boots has to be all caps lock, so that's a little bit odd, but this one is the Western Huntsman instead of like Huntsman 10 or something. But it gives you 15% off and free shipping. Guys, they have a VIP sizing guarantee. If it doesn't fit you right, you just send it back and they send you a new pair. And last but not least, Tacticam is on the docket. Go to thewesternhuntsman.com/gear and you can get you some Tacticam. The difference between buying Tacticam gear elsewhere versus on my website is we donate a portion of those proceeds to conservation or towards places like Sportsman's Alliance that takes care of us when it comes to the fight against anti-hunters. Tacticam is a great way to film your hunt and create your own content, or just make the memories and always have them. It's the Tacticam 5.0 is my go-to camera. They've got the wide lens as well. I run that one on my shoulder, and then the other one I have this flex clamp that I can attach to a tree as I'm calling it a bull, and film the whole thing from my shot to the arrow actually hitting my target, whatever, and it allows you to go back and kind of review that footage and find out what you did right or wrong. On the Tacticam note, I have a big order of Reveal X, the Reveal cell cam. The cell cameras should be here in the next week or so. I'm really looking forward to those. I know they've been really hard to get, but the Reveal cell cam is on its way, and I'll make a post about it if you guys want those. And again, like everything, whether it's swag or the camera items or gear items on the westernhuntsman.com website, the proceeds portion of that goes to conservation efforts. So, guys, with that, let's get into it. This episode, this interview, is with Ryan Michler. He is the founder and the host of the Order of Man podcast, and the movement, I should say, the Order of Man movement. They have a group called the Iron Council. This is an important conversation. Ryan is a fearless man, and that's what I really admire about him. He doesn't care if you're upset with what he says, and he shouldn't be. He is firm in his beliefs, and I am one of those guys that believes that what is the point of having principles if you don't stand up for them? And that's what Ryan does. So his podcast, Order of Man, he gets great guys on. He gets great guests on, like Jocko Willink, and he had Steve Ranella on, and he's had all sorts of people that, I mean, just inspiring kind of guests that you can learn a lot from. I'd encourage you to check the podcast out for sure. And go to orderofman.com and check out the website there. All those show links are going to be in the show notes. I think I said that right. Right? All the links are going to be in the show notes. Anyways, you guys, Ryan is super inspiring. Again, I believe he is one of the most fearless people out there. He's put together this great platform that was this big void missing out there. And some of the societal things that make folks like you and I cringe, or so to speak, he addresses those. And he takes them head on and right straight forward, right into the battle, right into the fire, and he's just fearless when it comes to this. And he's just a great guy. Way to go. I really love his platform, and I think you guys are going to like it too. You know what was super interesting about this interview is, I've had a lot of big name, so to speak, guests on this show. I've had them, whether they're in person or we do them remotely or whatever. I've had some big names on the show, and people don't generally throw me off or make me nervous, no matter who they are. I'm not one of those people that gets worked up about, oh, this guy has this big of a name, or this person is this well known, and but there was something about having Ryan on that I was kind of a little nervous and off my game. I could tell as I edited the interview and listened to it back that, and I think that what that is it's partly he's this guy that sets this huge standard of what it means to be a man and how to be a man and protect and preside and provide and do all these things. And we talk about his journey into hunting and how that's changed him and his reactions to becoming a hunter. And all these things, and it's the standard is so high with him. I felt like, man, I don't want to disappoint him or let him down. And also, he does a really good job with his podcast, and I feel like I don't. You guys know what I mean. I've complained about this in the past. And so, anyways, I was a little nervous with this one, and I think that just speaks to the way that Ryan has impacted me. As I've followed him over the last several years and just really enjoyed it. So, guys, I don't need to babble on anymore. With that said, let's get into it with Ryan Michler of Order of Man podcast. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this week I've got my new friend, Ryan Michler, who I've been following and been a huge fan of for a long time. And finally, I was able to nail down a time where we can get him on the show and talk. We're going to have a great conversation. We've got a lot of different topics. And Ryan is the owner and founder of a movement called Order of Man. And it is kind of comprised of a website and an Iron Council group and a podcast that is excellent. You've got great guests, Ryan. I appreciate you coming on the show. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Me too. It's for me, it's been something that I've really been looking forward to because I think that I have a lot of respect for you and what you do, specifically not just the messaging that you do. It's this movement that you've created, this following that you've created over the last, 6-7 years, starting Order of Man. And it's just been really fulfilling to watch from my end because I feel like you have found this void out there that is being filled by your platform. So again, thanks for coming on, and let's kick this off with giving us a little snapshot of who you are. And let's start with you, Ryan. Tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from, and how'd you grow up?
I live in Maine. I'm a father. I've got 4 kids. I've been married for 17 years. Just moved out here a couple of years ago for a bit of an adventure and started Order of Man about 6 years or so ago.
And can you give us an overview of what Order of Man is in case somebody's living under a rock and doesn't know what it is?
Yeah, I started Order of Man really with the goal of helping men with conversations, tools, resources that they need to thrive as men. So to step up as fathers, husbands, business owners, community leaders. And like I said, we've been doing that since 2015, March of 2015, and I think we've had over 350 guests now on the podcast, and we've got an exclusive brotherhood, which is called the Iron Council. We've got events that we run. So we run the full gambit on whatever we can do to help men succeed and thrive in life, which is really what I'm after. So I know a lot of guys are after the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. What's always been a curiosity from my end, Ryan, is going back prior to 6 years ago when you started the Order of Man. What was going through your mind? Where did this idea come from?
So I had started another podcast. I was in the financial planning field, and I had started a podcast called Wealth Anatomy, which was dedicated to helping medical professionals with their financial services and needs, insurance, investments, retirement planning, et cetera. And realized very quickly I love the medium of podcasting, but I didn't want to have that continued conversation that I'd had for 10 plus years at that point. Actually, I think it was just a little under 10 years. It was about 8 or 9 years. And so I realized, again, I love the medium of podcasting. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could get one-on-one coaching with individuals that I think highly of and respect? And so it started from very maybe humble or even selfish beginnings. And I thought, well, why would these guys give me the time of day? And I thought, well, if I start a podcast and broadcast this to the masses, then perhaps they'll share some time with me. And so that's exactly what happened. So again, 2015, we launched this thing. We had some very early success. We had a lot of people sharing what we were doing. And from then on, it was off to the races. So I wish I could say it was very noble intent. Like I had this idea to start this movement that would span the entire planet and help thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of men, which it has now. But it really was very humble. And like I said, it was selfish, but I felt like I could put this out in the world and guys would be served, and they have been. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I had a lot of selfish reasons starting my podcast as well. It's like, man, I could get some really excellent hunters on my show and I could learn a lot. But the idea is it's benefiting a lot of people that hear a lot of different information. You get some crazy good guests, dude.
Yeah. I mean, we've been fortunate that way. We've had Matthew McConaughey on, and Jocko, and who else? Marcus Luttrell, David Goggins, Andy Frisella, John Eldridge, which was an early influence for me and helping me become a better man. So the lineup of guests that we've had has been incredible, and it's a huge blessing that I've been able to create something that these men want to join us, and then also other men are served by listening to our conversations. So yeah, I'm tremendously
Sure.
blessed that way. Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting topic too. The kind of the whole focus or the one of the driving messages is to restore masculinity. And I want to talk about that for a minute. It's not something we cover a lot on my show, but I kind of want to touch on that because I think that people can misinterpret that, what that means and how you define restoring masculinity and what's missing in masculinity. Can we talk about like whether we're talking now or going back prior to starting Order of Man, where did the idea of restoring masculinity come from to you, and like what was lacking in your mind? Does that make sense?
Sure. You did say something interesting, so I was going to ask you a question on that. You said people would misinterpret that. I'm actually not sure how they would misinterpret that unless they're trying to deliberately misinterpret that. But I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, what I think about that is in a society that we live in today, in this overly sensitive world of social media and wokeness and all these other things that happen, I can see people getting on there and, you hear all these things about toxic masculinity and there's a lot of ridiculousness. And I think what I'm really implying at the question would be thrown back to you. How do you define masculinity? Because that's what I think could be misinterpreted. Masculinity has a lot of different personas, if you will.
I mean, not really.
And
It doesn't actually. People misinterpret that, like you said. Masculinity has been defined by thousands of years of experience on this planet. So, I mean, there's not really any confusion about what it means to be a man and what masculinity is, unless you're intentionally and deliberately trying to misinterpret it to fit your ideology or narrative. David Gilmour did some great work with a book called Man in the Making. Oh, excuse me. Man, now I'm drawing a blank. I'm gonna have to look at that. Anyways, and what he did is he went through just different cultures throughout time and history and looked at what they thought about masculinity and found some striking similarities between cultures that had not even been introduced to each other. One of the common things you'll hear from people is that masculinity is a social construct. Well, it's not at all. It's actually a biological construct, and it's supported societally because it works. It hasn't been until relatively recently when we have this ease of modernity, which we can call into question what it means to be a man and what a man should be doing. If times were more difficult, then nobody would be questioning what a man does and how he shows up. So what David Gilmour has found is that, again, there were some striking similarities, and he narrowed it down to three components of what he would say is masculinity defined by these different cultures. He said protect, provide, and the third one was to procreate. Now I've changed that a little bit because I've interpreted it in my own way, and I don't think being able to procreate necessarily defines you as a man. I know plenty of males who I would consider among the manliest men I know, and whether by their own desires or medical restrictions and limitations haven't been able to procreate. So the way that I define masculinity is that of a protector, a provider, and one who presides, which is synonymous with leadership. So that's not confusing. That isn't controversial. Plenty of data suggests that is the case. We've embraced that for thousands and thousands of years, and now, and again, the ease of modernity, people can call that into question. But when shit hits the fan, who do men turn to? Who does society turn to? Well, they turn to the men because we go back to those biological hardwiring that men and women have developed over tens of thousands of years.
Yeah. The
book is Manhood in the Making, by the way.
Manhood in the Making. Okay,
right.
Okay.
I butchered that a little bit. That's what it's called.
Yeah. No, it's and no worries on that, man. I go blank more often when I'm recording a podcast than any other time with that. But I want to touch on something that you said. When you're talking about these societies, specifically the ancient societies that were never introduced to each other, and I've talked about this multiple times, not necessarily on the show, but it is an interesting concept. This ancient theme of men being protectors. And what I'm getting at is like when you look at the samurai from Japan, and all that was going on at the same time the Nez Perce Indians were here in my neck of the woods in Idaho. And they were honoring these warriors and had these stories about the heart of the monster and all these things that I can get into. All this was going on at the same time. And if you strip away some of the nuances of what, whatever part of the world they're in, they were never connected. They know nothing about each other, but their goals and their dreams and their ambitions and their cultural, I don't know how to say that, the cultural identities all centered around the same things. And that is what is getting perverted today. Does that make sense?
Well, it's easy to distort or warp or misinterpret what it means to be a man in a relatively easy environment. I mean, the reason people have the opportunity to even call into question what it means to be a man is because men created and provided those freedoms for them to do so. So it's a bit ironic to see what we're seeing now. But yeah, you're exactly right. Like everybody knows what it means to be a man, and it really isn't called into question until things are comfortable and complacent and easy. But as I said earlier, when things go south, everybody looks to the man to be the type of men they would hope they would become. And so what we have is we have millions and millions of males, and there's a difference between a male and a man, but millions of males across the planet who are far inadequate and inferior of being able to deal with these situations. And fortunately, it's nice. It's a luxury. They haven't had to deal with this. They haven't had to go to war. They haven't had to deal with natural disasters or emergencies or famine or any of this stuff. And that's nice. Mm-hmm. But when things go south, I think it's really going to be able to identify who are the men and who are the boys.
Yeah. Great point. And that's exactly one of the things that we talk about a lot on my show is this anti-hunting movement and the threats we face as hunters. It's a new thing, right? This is not the anti-hunting movement does not have some 100 or 200 year track record. It's a new thing. And I've kind of put the blame of this movement as to exactly what you just stated, which is we've got this life where there is nothing. It's almost like people get bored. It's easy to go to McDonald's and easy to go to a grocery store and we have electricity and power and heat, and we have air conditioning. We have all these luxuries. We don't have to go very far physically. We can get in a car. We could ride in a plane. We could do all these things that have made this lifestyle of comfort and simpleness. And there's not a lot of suffering. When that happens, and if you look back like through world history, this happened in Greece, this happened in Rome. When that level is achieved, people start finding new ways to create almost like this false sense of suffering. And I believe that's where the anti-hunting movement was kind of born out of. And they make it sound like it's not this necessary thing anymore, and it's cruel. It's all these things, all these buzzwords that they like to use. So, I think I think you nailed it, man. That's a great way to put it. What do you think is lacking the most in terms of masculinity?
That's an interesting question. I think the biggest thing that's lacking is not so much what we as men are lacking, but what society is lacking. And this goes to your earlier point where we don't have any real issues, so we make up dumb shit to worry about, right? We're worried about which bathroom to use and who dropped out of the Olympics and who stuck around and, what our favorite sports team is doing and what the new Netflix documentary is that we should be watching. And so we get outraged over nonsense, things that really aren't all that important because we don't have anything else to worry about. And that's what we as men are looking for. We're looking for challenge. We're looking for strife and turmoil. And then we rise to that occasion. We make ourselves more capable physically, mentally, and emotionally. And because those things don't exist, we are really lacking in a sense of purpose and direction, which is why you see suicide rates on the rise with men up to that 4 to 5 times higher than women. You see depression on the rise. You see drug abuse on the rise and alcohol abuse on the rise. That's because we don't have anything real to worry about. So I think what really is lacking for men is a problem, a meaningful problem where they can actually rise to the occasion and strive to make themselves better and more significant so they can deal with the demons that are in front of them. But we just don't have any anymore, which is good. Again, it's good. I'm not complaining about that. The fact that I'm probably not in my lifetime going to have to fight for my life with another human being, that we live in a relatively comfortable, violent, free, turmoil-free life. That's wonderful. So What do we do now? Well, you've got to go out and find something meaningful. And that might be, as John Eldredge would say, since I talked about him earlier, a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. And yet most men don't do that. There's no battle. There's no challenge. There's no turmoil or suffering. There's no beauty. Less and less men are getting married or even believe in the sanctity of marriage or even partnering with a woman. And there's no adventure. We live in these concrete jungles. We're in cubicles all day long that are more akin to jail cells than they are somewhere we can be creative and produce wonderful, solutions to problems that we're dealing with. And we're miserable. So, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that men are feeling inadequate and inferior. And as I said earlier, making up a bunch of dumb stuff to worry about.
Yeah, that statement going back to John Eldredge, that was a great episode. That last one you did with him, by the way.
Thank
you.
The
concept of that, the concept of a battle to fight, those things that are in today's society lacking. I think that, I don't know, what is the solution with this? Because like you said, we've got all these comforts, right? And what is the solution in your mind to overcome the lack of a battle to fight, a beauty to save? And now I'm the one going blank with that. It's been several years since I read his book, but those concepts that are kind of lost today. What in your mind, what is the solution to that?
Well, the answer is in the question: a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. That's the answer. Find something meaningful. Find something that's challenging, that's difficult, but that calls to you, that speaks to you. Maybe it's charity. Maybe it's some sort of ecclesiastical service. Maybe it's starting a new business or a project, or picking up a new hobby. But find something that calls to you, and don't quit when it gets rough, and it will get rough and challenging. I've had my fair share of struggles and setbacks on this journey over the past 6 years with growing this movement, but I'm able to overcome it because it's the battle, it's the hill that I'm willing to die on. And so I put it out there and I exert myself, and I share what's on my mind, and it's meaningful to me. The adventure to live, go take a risk. Right? When's the last time you risked yourself physically, mentally, emotionally? When's the last time you put yourself on the line? When's the last time you struggled physically? When's the last time you confronted nature, whether that's a 5 or 10 mile hike up the toughest hike you can find, or going to run a marathon, or, going to swim, 100 miles or 10 miles or whatever it is. And then the beauty to rescue is like, who is it that you want to serve, that you want to lead? Is there a woman in your life? How do you woo her over? How do you continue to court her? How do you show her that she's important to you, that you care about her, and that you want to serve her and provide for her? The answer is in the question. You got to go out and find these things. And the more you do, the more fulfilled you'll be, the more capable you'll be, because you'll be working towards solutions to your problems. And you'll live a better life, and the people around you will as well. Your kids, your wife, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, your clients will all be better because you're around.
One thing that we kind of glassed over there, where you really articulate this well, you were pretty humble there in the beginning, introducing yourself. But for those listening, Ryan has written a book called Sovereignty, and this book, dude, this book is amazing. And I don't say that because I'm not like groveling here. It actually was one of the first books that I have read that resonated in a way that was complicated stuff dumbed down for a guy like me that can understand it. Does that make sense?
Well,
It's laid
it's
out.
written by a dumb guy like me who needs to write it in that way so I can wrap my head around it. So you and
Well,
me are kindred spirits in that context.
it happens, man. And so, no, and it's cool. I read I've got the paperback version, and then I like the audio version too.
Thank you.
But the book, what was that, 2017 or something that came out?
Yeah.
And I just want to touch on like the principles of that book since we got you on, because, gosh, man, I think like every dude in society today should read that book. And this isn't just a groveling, performance here to try to sell some books. It legitimately is helpful, and it legitimately has structure to it that makes sense and is easy to follow. And because a lot of dudes out there are like me. Dudes like me need dudes like you. We weren't able to put that kind of information together in our own mind to formalize or organize a lifestyle that helps us improve every day and helps us achieve bigger things, and kind of sometimes in a lot of ways wake us up from our own, and by that I don't mean the wokeness thing. Just wake us up from this, shake us out of this societal norm that a lot of men fall into, that creates the depressions and the suicides that you were kind of alluding to earlier. And that's what this book does, and that's what this book, it's very good at articulating these principles and the principles in it. Like, I'll let you. You're going to explain a lot better than I can. Walk us through the book. Give us the basis of the book.
Yeah, so I wrote, like you said, Sovereignty in 2017, and I did it with the goal of helping men become, sovereign individuals, taking charge and authority over their life. We see too many men who relinquish control to their wives and their spouses and their bosses and their employees and the government and everything else they can. My boss is a jerk, my wife is a bitch, my this is the that, and it's like, when you do that, when you blame everybody else in any other situation for your shortcomings, essentially what you're doing is you're giving away your power to do anything about it. I mean, that's what's happening. Like if I was blaming, for example, my podcast performance on my audience, like nobody listens, nobody cares about this stuff, and I was just complaining about it, then I'm just going to sit back and wait for them to change, or hopefully they'll come around. But if instead I say, well, what can I do to improve the reach that I have with the podcast, and how can I make myself better? What skills do I need to develop? Then I maintain some of that sovereignty, that control and autonomy over my own life. And that's what the entire book is about. It's about creating a code of conduct and how you'll conduct yourself and your behavior. It's about the external and internal threats that we deal with that are at odds with our sovereignty, and really guides the reader through a simple process that they can use in their life to take control once and for all of their own life. But it's not for everybody, because a lot of people like to blame other people.
To that point, Ryan, what I would say, so I've been reading books like I read a lot. I just finished the craziest book about Stonewall Jackson, the Civil War. I want to talk to somebody about it because it had that big of an impact. Mm-hmm. But your book did that too, and I wanted to talk to people about it. And I when I say I read a lot, I read a ton, and it's all nonfiction kind of stuff like Sovereignty. I eat that kind of stuff up. And what was pointed in and really struck me with your book is when you read a book like that you can, I guess you could classify it as like a self-help book, right?
Yeah, I think so.
A lot of times when you read that, there's a lot of really good theoretical ideas that are hard to apply in realistic day-to-day life. Not the case with yours. And that's what I really liked about it. And that's why it had such an impact on somebody like me and a couple other people that I know read it. I actually handed it out at a like a family function one time. But
yeah.
the point to that is it simplifies a way to apply it in your day-to-day life. And, the preside, it gives you this guide that I think a lot of books in that category lack. It's hard to take what you're reading and like put it into your own realm, if that makes sense, where this didn't have that problem.
Yeah, I mean look, reading is great, but yeah, there's a lot of people that like to pontificate on ideas without really
Yeah.
thinking about how to apply that in their lives. And you need both. You need to ponder and think and really dive into the world of self-development. But at some point, if you're not going to apply anything of what you learned, then what in the world is the point of even reading it? Like a lot of people believe that maybe you're just going to, I don't know, pick this stuff up through osmosis just by reading. That hasn't been the case for me. So I wanted to present the reader with some thoughts and some insights they hadn't considered before, but then we need to move into action. And so when I started Order of Man in 2015, my goal was always to bridge the gap between what we know and what we do. And if I ask men, what should you do to lose weight? Everybody knows. If I ask, well, what can you do to improve your financial affairs? Everybody knows. Like, these aren't secrets. There's nothing out there that's a secret. But why is it that people are fat? Why is it that people are broke? It's because there's a gap, and I call this an integrity gap, but there's a gap between what they know they should be doing and what they're actually doing. And if I can provide the framework, which I consider the bridge between the two, then I think it's going to move more people towards doing rather than just spending a bunch of time thinking about improving their lives. Which, by the way, to go back to that depression thing, the darkest times in my life are when I had this vision for who I was and what I wanted to be doing. And there was a great divide between that vision of myself and the results that I was producing. It was unrealized and failed expectations. That's what the integrity gap creates. It creates depression. It creates a sense of hopelessness. It creates, in extreme cases, suicidal thoughts and actions and behaviors. So we've got to bridge that gap. And that was what the book was all about.
Yeah, and we've all been there. I think. I think any adult man, we've all been there, and I'm sure women have been there. And but I always make the statement to my audience. I can't speak from a woman's perspective because I'm not a woman, and so I always kind of leave that there. But we all go through that, and so that book, if you guys haven't read it, the book's going to be. I'll put it in the show notes. And they can just get it right off your website, right? Orderofman.com.
I don't think that we currently have any copies, but if you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you pick up a book, you can find it there.
Yeah. And I really like the audio version of it because it's actually you reading it. And I think that's important. So, let's kind of translate that into, you didn't grow up hunting. Which, by the way, did you grow up in Utah?
I moved to Utah when I was 13 or 14 years old.
What part of Utah were you in?
Southern Utah, so the St. George area.
Oh, down in St. George? Yeah, I grew up in central Utah, so that's why I asked. Yeah, man. So I want to talk about that, and which St. George, I don't know how the hell you survive those summers down there. Damn, man, it gets hot.
I know, it gets so warm. We're in Maine now, so we don't have to deal with that heat quite so much. So that's nice.
No more desert. I did shoot I shot a wild boar on the Virgin River down where it goes right before it hits Mesquite.
Yep.
Mesquite, Nevada. Yeah. Shot a wild boar down there in like 1999.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyways, what was hunting in your mind when you were growing up? Like, what was it, like this distant thing, or what was it?
Actually, I wasn't even really introduced until I moved to Utah. So I didn't have any preconceived notions or thoughts or ideas about hunting before I moved to Utah, I was in Southern California. So nobody, my family didn't hunt. Nobody that I knew hunted that I knew of. So I just wasn't exposed to it. So it wasn't like I had this idea of what it was or wasn't. It was ignorance, complete ignorance, and something I didn't think a lot about. But then I moved, like I said, to Utah when I was 13, and I remember that first fall. We drove around, and it must have been opening weekend or somewhere in there. And a lot of people in Utah have outdoor, basketball hoops, on their driveways. And we would drive around and we'd see on these basketball hoops dead deer hanging from these basketball hoops. And I was like, what in the world is this place that we moved to? Because it was a complete culture shift from what I had been accustomed to. But yeah, when I grew up there in Utah, we had what they called, technically they called it fall break, but it more aptly should have been named opening season break or something like that. Because
deer
fall
hunter,
break
deer,
always exactly. Fall break always coincided, not incidentally with the opening of deer season. So yeah, a lot of my friends would go out and they'd hunt with their dads and they'd have deer camp. And that's actually something that I didn't do until about 4 years ago. A friend invited me, and so I never thought ill of it or anything like that. I was always kind of fascinated and intrigued by it, but not something that was really on my radar. Like I said, it wasn't until 4 years ago that I actually went on my first hunt.
I feel like you got the bug, man. The hunting bug. It's like you're hopelessly addicted or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value that comes from it. I would like to do it more, but I'm just so busy and everything else. I'll tell you, my son actually has it even worse than I do. That kid is a little bit crazy, actually, when it comes to hunting. He'd rather be outside all day long. This morning, I got back from the gym and he was already outside shooting his bow. He's working on the food plot. He's looking at cameras. The kid is he's just insane about it. And I love it because there's a lot worse things that he could be doing than figuring out the patterns of the deer and the turkey that come into our property. But yeah, every opportunity I can, for the most part, I do try to be pretty present with my business and family. I'm going to take that opportunity to grow and learn through the practice of hunting and improving those skill sets.
So you basically you moved to Maine. You've got like 40 acres, you said. Probably pretty good whitetail country. What was kind of what motivated you to do that?
Really for us, maybe a little bit, but really for us, it was just about adventure. My wife and I had talked about moving for quite a while, and fortunately, I've been blessed with the opportunity to do my business anywhere. And so I came out here and met with a friend, and I went to a week-long jiu-jitsu camp and really fell in love with it. My wife and I came back out. Must have been 2 or 3 months later. She fell in love with it. We put an offer out on a house, and it moved pretty quickly, but we felt compelled and called to be here. So it's been good. It's been really
and you're
good.
digging it now, huh? You like kind of the East Coast, that northeastern Maine, even with the winters up there.
Yeah, we like the winters. I like hard things. I like challenge and figuring out new things. I bought a snowplow for the truck, and we upgraded our heating system here, and we got a bunch of sleds and snowboards, and we've embraced it. I could sit here and complain about cold and wet and miserable, and you could do that and you'd be justified, I think. Or you can just embrace it and say, yeah, this is what it is. Let's make the most of it. And we have, and it's been really good. I've really enjoyed it.
I love it, man. I think I told you a little bit right before we started recording, but we're on 26 acres of bare land. We are legitimately off grid right now. In fact, I'm recording this because I have a generator running, powering up my hunting cabin. And that's my new studio. Cause we had a cool studio at the last place, the Broken Time studio. And now I'm in a hunting trailer with a generator. And I think this kind of ties into some of your messaging, where I love the challenge of this. It's a lot of work. It's always, I have to go fill propane or get gas or chop wood or, cut a new road down this part of the property and get a ditch in so we can eventually get power, and which I should have in a few weeks. But, I love, and I had to act like I was really bummed about having to spend money on a tractor. Because my wife wasn't real thrilled about it, but where we're at, we're going to get so much snow. It's not even funny.
Right.
And so, I had to do the whole, we got to drop some money on a tractor, and that a bummer, but I was so excited about it, and I still am. And now she loves it. So, and we homeschool as well as like you guys do. And it's just been I love it. I think a lot of it feeds into my own personal primal nature of this kind of living off the land concept. And it's just I don't know, what is it about that? Does that, in your opinion, is that what's kind of, it'll help feed a man's soul? Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not going to speak for every man, of course, but
Yeah.
I've lived in the city. I've been to the city here and there. I just got back from DC a couple of days ago, and I think that has a great potential to just tear at you and just to rip your soul out. I'd rather be out here and be in nature and be around wildlife and be able to hike and enjoy and not be so consumed with the day-to-day bull crap that most people get wrapped up in. So it's definitely fed my soul. We've got more into hunting, and we're managing this land, and we're figuring it out, and we're learning new skills that we didn't have before. And all of that brings a sense of fulfillment and pride to my life that I just don't think is going to be found in the concrete jungles that most people live in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I can't. I'm like you. I've lived in big cities. I've done the whole corporate BS thing, whatever you want to call it. But I don't know that I've ever been happier. Yet I find myself just immersed in some of the most labor intensive work. And I've done some hard, I was in the Marines, and I know you were in the service as well. And all these things that you could say were very difficult, but there's something about this day-to-day mundane challenge. I call it. It's not like some big epic thing or event. But I love it. So, getting back to hunt, are you coming out west to hunt this year?
I just got back from a hunt in Hawaii about a month ago. I was on an axis hunt and a goat hunt in Hawaii. And then I'll be in Colorado in November for a elk hunt. And then outside of that, I've got Minnesota, potentially Texas, and then here in Maine.
Do you, I guess, I had all sorts of different questions that I try not to like formalize these interviews in a way. I used to do that, and it didn't work, man.
Yeah,
I just kind of have conversations.
It doesn't. Right. Yeah, it doesn't work for sure.
With, I guess, the concept of hunting and how that relates to being a man, in the sense of not like defining, like, I don't think you need to be a hunter to be masculine. That's not the point I'm trying to make, because I know a lot of women hunters that are a lot better at hunting than I am. So I hope it's not some way to be masculine, but I think that I've always kind of put.
I think there is, though. I will interject there. I think there is a level of masculinity that can be found in hunting. That's not to say you can't be a man if you don't hunt, but I think you struggling in nature and providing and working and toiling and the thrill of the hunt and the satisfaction of the kill is a very masculine thing. Again, that's not to say, like you said, that women can't do it or that you have to do it to be a man. But let's not say that there's not a masculine pursuit in the world of hunting. There certainly is.
Sure. No, my reference was more, I don't think you need to hunt to be masculine, but there is that sense. And it goes back to a lot of the principles that you talk in the book Sovereignty. And it also goes back to a lot of the principles that John Eldredge talks about. And I don't want to say the book wrong, but I believe it's Wild at Heart. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And when he's talking about the adventure to live and the battle to fight, hunting combines both of those, in my opinion. Especially, I don't know if you've ever hunted for elk in September with a bow when they're screaming their heads off. But that is
no, I have not. But yeah, that looks like a pretty incredible experience.
All right, Ryan, if you need a place to go, get you an Idaho elk tag and come on out and see me. Because
it'd be great.
That is the one thing about that hunt that I think that, I guess it kind of points to where I'm going with this conversation, is that is a battle to fight. That is a battle to fight. You are out there. You're up against an 800-pound animal that is pissed, that is trying to follow its natural, its tendency to want to breed, and they're fired up, they're protective, and you're getting right up in their face, right? And they're screaming in your face. It's sometimes it just feels like the entire world is shaking around you when they're screaming like that. And that is one of those like things that throughout the entire year, I think about, and I find myself, I'll be in thought about it, and I'll be smiling. My wife, what are you smiling at? And it's just such an adventure. And I'm usually alone when I'm out there hunting elk, and it's being out there in the backcountry by myself, calling in bulls and trying to get at this 800-pound animal with an arrow, right? There is masculinity in that, and there is an adventure in that, and that need for battle. I don't know how to describe that, and I don't even know where I was going with that question. I had a question in there somewhere.
got excited talking about it.
I did.
You're right. And I think every man ought to at least try his hand or go out with friends. A lot of guys will ask me, how do you get into hunting? And I would suggest that you look at your current circle, and there's probably somebody who hunts in your circle, and you just ask to tag along. I've done that. Before I even got into hunting, I went with a friend, and he drew a special unit in Utah, and I said, "Hey man, I don't have a tag, but can I come spot for you?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I went and I spotted for him, and and that was my participation in it. But I got to see what that world was all about. So if you take some active steps towards trying to immerse yourself into it, or take even just a step into the world of hunting, you're going to find out what's available, and if it's something that calls to you or not. Realize it doesn't call to everybody, but it's certainly worthy of pursuit.
It's just like anything, right? I mean, if you're starting a business, you find a mentor. If you're trying to become a better salesperson, you find a mentor. If you're trying to, whatever the case is, if you're getting into hunting, find a mentor. And
right.
A lot of people are super willing. I think they're more willing than people give it credit for. And finding a mentor does not mean getting on Facebook and asking people where to go hunt. That's not finding a mentor.
Right.
And so, it's a great concept, and it's a great sport for people. It's not for everybody, like you said, but one thing I always ask people, you would fall under that category of adult onset hunter, right?
Yes.
What surprised you the most about hunting once you started getting into it?
Good question. I would say that. So the first hunt that I went on was with a now good friend, Colin Cottrell, and he took me to Texas. He had a lease there, and we went and hunted whitetail. It was a bow hunt and a rifle hunt. And so the first day I was able to shoot a deer with my rifle. And I think the third day, I believe that we were there, I shot a deer with my bow. So I was successful on both accounts. And that first deer that I shot with my rifle, I was very surprised how bittersweet the moment was. I think there's a misconception from non-hunters that those who do hunt are these ruthless, cold-blooded killers that don't care about nature and wildlife. And that hasn't been the case for me. And when I walked up on this animal that was a magnificent animal, it was this nice, mature whitetail that I had taken its life. It was bitter in that I know that animal died at my hand, but it was sweet in that I set out to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And then also I quite literally put food on the table. And that makes me a better man, frankly.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience. And I still look at that moment fondly, but there's still a bit of like every time, and that hasn't ended. Every time I look at an animal, I'm like, man, I killed that thing. And I didn't expect to feel that way, but I think that healthy level of reverence is important. And if you don't have that, that would be a red flag.
Yeah, I was going to say,
if I wasn't concerned.
Yeah, that'd be a red flag. That. Yeah, for
right.
sure.
Right.
Yeah. It's like it's a big responsibility, and it's almost, there is a burden aspect sometimes to hunting and notching a tag. And
Well, with anything,
yeah,
not just hunting, just with life in general, we have to make tough decisions, and the decisions we make aren't always going to go over well with everybody, and there's going to be sacrifices on your part and other people's part as you progress and improve in your career or your hobbies or your pursuits, and that's what winning requires. It requires a sacrifice, and if it was always easy and always enjoyable, would it be as meaningful? I don't know that it would. So
sure.
I embrace the pain, the suffering, and even the little bit of bitterness that comes with harvesting an animal and taking it out of the forest and eating it. I know that sounds, for people who aren't into hunting, I know that sounds barbaric, but it's always funny. You hear these guys like, oh, well, why are you out hunting? You should just go into the grocery store. Well, yeah, a cow had to die for you to have that steak that you had tonight. It's no different. In fact, I would argue that it's better if I go out into the world and procure it myself. But
Yeah.
there's a level of hypocrisy that always is pretty astounding to me.
Oh man. Yeah. Don't even get me started on that.
That's a whole other conversation.
It's fulfilling in a lot of different ways too, in terms of when you're bringing that meat home that you harvested yourself in the wild, this wild animal that lived its own, speaking of things along the lines of sovereignty, it lived its own sovereign life. It wasn't cooped up in not that all farms are like that, but you know what I mean? Yeah, with some of those animals, and to compare the level of fulfillment from buying a $20 steak at a grocery store versus having elk meat or venison. I start thinking about my wife cooking all these different things. She's a really good cook, so I get excited. But the fulfillment that speaks to a lot of the principles in your book, providing, presiding, these things that just kind of all feed into that, and that I think is what a lot of men lack in their life. They lack that fulfillment because I think that there's this feeling of they haven't achieved something that falls within those categories. When you sit in a cubicle all day, you've satisfied maybe some certain task that your boss required of you, but you're not fulfilling something greater than that, something that is, and I don't think it's selfish, but it is self-serving in terms of self-fulfillment. I don't know.
Well, it's also your primal desire. So I told you that we were in DC this last weekend, and we went to the Smithsonian's Museum of Natural History, which is an incredible museum.
Yes, it is.
You can go. You should definitely go.
Yep.
And I came into the human evolution exhibit or whatever it was, and I walked into this display, and there was a bone on the display. It looked like it must have been a hip bone, and there was a hole in it, and then there was this long stick. And if I remember correctly, that was a hip bone from a horse, and the hole in the hip bone was created from a spear that our early ancestors had thrown that spear and killed that animal. And it was over 100,000 years old.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak here, but it was like 300,000 or 400,000 years old.
Holy cow! Yeah,
and
that's nuts.
So these are our early ancestors who are hunting. They're killing animals to provide for our way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another bone that they had found around the same time, and it had marks on the bone which were congruent with butchering animals, again around the same time. So our early ancestors were hunting and killing animals, and so that's a very primal urge and desire and necessity, frankly.
Yep.
And again, this goes back to our earlier conversation. It isn't until the relative ease of modernity that we can eat plants and vegetables and be just fine.
Yeah.
And you'll hear people say, well, we've evolved out of that. No, we haven't. And we never will. We are hunters. We are predators. And that's not to say that we don't have a responsibility to make sure we're good stewards over our land. We are. But we are predators. And there's something to be said for embracing who you actually are and striving to become more of that person, whether it's hunting because our early ancestors have done it, or even being a man when maybe you don't feel like it. We have this thing about gender confusion and all this kind of stuff, and I think a lot of it stems from confusion of children, that their parents aren't directing them and society is telling them one thing that's counter to biology. And then they have their friends with their peer pressure. And maybe the solution isn't to just assume that you're fluid in your gender, but maybe the solution is to embrace who you biologically are and strive to make yourself more capable in who you are.
Yeah.
And so this is a very difficult thing. I see people when they just reject who they are, and it's very sad. And we know this through the data, that it creates a very difficult emotional and mental state for people, to the point where they'll kill themselves over it.
I was going to say suicidal rates among that group are pretty high. And I don't have the exact facts, but we could do an entire podcast on that exact topic right there. It's one of those very intriguing topics from my end, just because of some personal relationships. And, I don't even know how to respond to that a lot of times, other than I feel like there's a lot of misguidance out there, and there's too much influence from the wrong places. Young folks need to be influenced by folks like you. And if they want to get into hunting,
I would say young folks need to be influenced by a mother and a father who are loving and engaging.
Great
and
point.
Sure, they can get influence outside, but every child, I think, deserves to have a mother and a father in the home who are engaged and present and caring and nurturing and doing all the things that mothers and fathers do. That's what they need.
I couldn't agree more with that. Personally, I think the lack of fathers, in most cases, and sometimes periodically the lack of mothers, but the lack of fathers is what has really created a lot of the struggles with the things that we're talking about. And again, that's a whole that's a whole podcast topic there.
Yeah, we can go down a tunnel on that one for sure.
Yeah. And so just getting back real quick, hunting in terms of I'll give you a great example of and see if I can ask it that way. But like when everybody started losing their shit over this pandemic, they're buying toilet paper by the pallet load, and there's like this meat shortage going on. And did you have, because you're a hunter, a slightly less panicky feeling? Not that you panicked at all, because I didn't, and I certainly, if you didn't, or if I didn't, you sure as hell didn't. But because you know how to procure your own meat, was there a level of comfort in that?
I mean, I wish I could tell you that 100% of what we eat is what we've grown and what we've killed, but that isn't the case. And so, of course, when you see supply lines with groceries and meat and vegetables and things that you need, like that, there's a little bit of fear to that. But we also had a full freezer, so we've got plenty of meat set aside, and like you said, I know how to procure the meat. My oldest son and I have spent a lot of time out in our own fields, tending the fields, creating food plots, figuring out where the deer and the turkey move so that we can put our blinds and our stands in the right place, and what do they respond to, and what food do they like best. And so these are all skill sets that I have a long way to go, but I'm developing, which gives me a better chance when something goes wrong. I mean, just the fact, here's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't think about. Just the ability to see a wild animal is actually a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really think about that, but I know that I've gotten better over the past 3 or 4 years of spotting an animal that might be 300 or 400 yards away. My father-in-law is somebody who's got the greatest sight when it comes to seeing elk and deer and wild game. And I'm like, how in the world does he see this? Well, because he practices.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great, because I've been saying that for a long time. It is a skill set within itself to locate.
100% it is. Right. Of course. Most people are oblivious. I'll drive down the road. In fact, just this morning, I was going to the gym to get my jiu-jitsu session in. And I've looked at this field because this field is notorious for having deer, and there's a lot of geese in the field. I'm like, man, I want that field. I want to buy that field, whatever it is. And I looked over, and there was probably 10 to 15 deer just in the back corner. I would say 400 or 500 yards away. And most people, I'm sure there's so many people who drove by that this morning and didn't see a thing, because they're into their radio or they're in their head or whatever, and that's fine. But like, open your eyes, be aware of your surroundings, look at what's going on, and you're going to have a better time when things go south. If you
and
do.
like you said, practice. You
Right,
remember
sure.
remember as kids, there was that game Slug Bug when you're driving around and you'd find it.
Yeah, right. And you punch your brother, your sister. Yeah, sure.
So that's a lot of fun when you live in town. But when living out like where we do, my family, we get and I've got 2 daughters and my wife we have, it's instead of a slug bug challenge, which nobody gets slugged, by the way, just for any of those woke folks out there listening.
No, I think you should say everybody gets slugged.
Everybody,
and just let those wokesters deal with it.
It's brutal, man. No.
That's right. And just let those people deal with it. They don't like it. That's fine. Don't do it. But here's what we do.
I really like your attitude, man. But yeah, our competition it's spotting a deer is 1 point, spotting an elk is 2 points, spotting a bull elk is 3 points, turkeys are a point. Anyway, the point being, we spent a lot of time on the road out here getting to different various things that we're doing, and my girls can spot wildlife. I mean, they put me through the ringer, man, and I've been doing this for 40 years. And they can spot deer and elk. And my one daughter, we're real close to Montana. We're on the Montana side. I thought she was pulling my leg, but there was a black bear, probably 150 yards off the highway.
Wow!
And she spotted
That's
that
amazing.
sucker, man. And it's just cool. It's like they do, because
it is cool.
I think a lot of people getting into hunting don't understand that aspect of it, that you do have to train your eye to locate these animals and be able to spot them.
Well, and they've evolved to hide and have camouflage, and so they're difficult to see. But yeah, you do have to train that, and it's a fun thing to get better at.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, Ryan, I could keep this going for a long time. I really like talking to you. I'd love to do it in the future again.
Yeah, man.
Let's kind of wrap this up. Why don't you tell folks what's coming up with the Order of Man? Maybe if you wouldn't mind touching on the Iron Council. I think that's a valuable program.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So. Of course, yeah. So as far as what's coming up, we've got some events coming up and things like that. They're all sold out, our events now, but we do have some fall and the fall events are sold out, but we have some winter and spring events coming up. So these are exclusive for men. We hold men's events, and then we do a father-son event as well. So those will be coming online here soon. And then, like you said, we have the Iron Council, which is our exclusive brotherhood. This is almost 1,000 men at this point who are all banded together, working together, holding each other accountable to goals and ambitions and desires, and teaching each other skill sets and different things that you might need, from finances to the ability to communicate effectively, to becoming a more effective leader, to improving your physical fitness, or investing in real estate, or whatever you might be interested in, running a marathon or getting into hunting. We've got a hunting channel in there as well, or a firearms channel. So, that's what we're doing there. I started that in 2016, I believe it was. And like I said, we've grown to 1,000 people.
Wow.
And it's been a very, very powerful resource for quite literally tens of thousands of men at this point. It's such a cool thing to be part of. So that's the Iron Council.
Do you think that is important for men that have an all man association like that, where there is this level of accountability and mentorship and leadership amongst the group itself? Do you feel like that, and I'm sure it's important for women as well in that kind of circle, but how important is that to a man?
Yeah, it's not just important. It's a necessity. To go back to what we were talking about with the evolution of man, we operated in tribes, right? And so the women would get together and they would nurture and support each other, and they would support the community, the tribe, by harvesting the plants, and by making the blankets and the rugs and things like this. And they would get together and they'd be very communal that way. And that's great for women. And then the men would go out and they would defend the village and defend the tribe. And they'd stand shoulder to shoulder against enemies. They'd go out and they'd procure the game and bring it back where it could be cooked and processed and eaten and enjoyed by the tribe. And so we've always been very tribal creatures. And it isn't until, and this is the underlying theme, I think, of this podcast, is that it isn't until the relative ease of modernity where we no longer really do that, right? And we hear guys talk about, I'm a lone wolf and I don't need anybody else. And then you see in the entertainment industry, guys like the Marlboro Man and James Bond and Jason Bourne. And these guys are interpreted as being the epitome of masculinity. And what's the one thing they all have in common? They don't work well with others. And so we've glamorized this idea of just going out and doing it on your own. And we suffer because of it. So what we need to do instead is find, as men, other men to spend time with. And here's what changes when you bring a woman to the equation. And trust me, there's a time and a place for women to be there, because I love the presence of a female. I love it. You know, whether it's my wife or my daughter or other females that are friends of mine, that feminine presence is a beautiful thing. But there's also a time and a place for men to just be men, because when a woman enters the picture, it changes the equation. And in many ways, it changes it for the better. But there's got to be a time where we can release and vent and jackjaw and maybe even be, a little bit brass or crass, I should say, or crude at times. But we need that as men. Last night I was at jiu-jitsu and there was probably 10 of us, and we were training and telling jokes and poking at each other. And gosh, we need that.
Yeah.
And we just don't get it.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, I will say that the converse is true with women. Women need to be around other women. I fully encourage and foster and support when my wife says, hey, I want to go out with the girls, or I want to see my sister, or I want to spend time with my mom. Yes, do that. I will take the kids. I want you to go do that, because I know that you're going to be served. And ultimately, you're going to be a more fulfilled partner for me and a mother to our children, and all the things that I have a desire for you to be. So, we all need our alone time.
It's a great point that you make there. And I think that gets sometimes lost in terms of, there seems to be this pursuit to make everybody so equal in everything. And I think that misses the point, and it people might not see the beauty in the difference, especially in a marriage. And men communicate with each other differently than men communicate with women, and women communicate with each other differently than women can communicate with men. And so there's beauty in all of it. And I think that it's important to have fulfillment in all of that. I love getting together with the guys and shooting the shit, whether we're talking hunting or, I have a lot of friends that want to talk sports, and I'm not a big sports fan. I like to play sports, but I don't like to watch sports. But it's still good. It's still good. It's like you said, giving each other a hard time over this and that. And men are brutal with each other. And I feel like the more deep we cut with each other sometimes, joking around, the better the friendship is, right? So I think that is critical, and it's sometimes lacking in a lot of circles. And so people seem to want to take offense to something like that. And so I think you're going to have 1,001 for the Iron Council.
Well, good. Yeah. There's also one thing I would say about men getting together, and you alluded to this as you talked about, sometimes we're pretty harsh on each other. And so generally society will look at it and say, well, you guys are being mean, right? You're hurting each other's feelings. And we're so consumed with how we feel about things that it comes at the expense of the positives that come with it. But there's another thing here. There's another factor here. And I think that the reason men give each other a hard time is there's an added level of accountability to it. There's a call out, which is a challenge, which makes men improve, right? Like if I'm training jiu-jitsu with a friend of mine and I give him a hard time because of how, soft his hands are or something, or how weak his grip is, well, then he's going to improve his grip, right? So there's a call out to it. But there's another factor here. And the factor is I need to know which men in my life are capable of holding their own. And if I get after, let's say you and I are playing around and we're at the game or we're training together and I give you a hard time and you crumble, then you're actually somebody I'm not interested in having in my corner.
Yeah.
Because if you can't handle a simple joke or you can't handle me giving you a hard time or holding you accountable to something, then how in the world are you going to handle when things really get tough? And so it's a litmus test for men to see, is this guy worthy of standing beside me? And you'll find a lot of men aren't worthy of it. And you'll find that there are a few who absolutely are. And we as men should be identifying who those guys are.
Great point, man. Love it. I love it. I keep threatening to wrap this up, but you just full of good information, man.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'm going to put the Order of Man website and a link to the book Sovereignty in the show notes. And Great. You had mentioned that I know the events, specifically the one in September, which I believe was a father-son event, is sold out, but you've got some winter events and all that's going to be listed on the website. You're pretty active on social media.
Usually it's not even listed. It's usually not even listed on the website because I open it up and it just goes so quickly. But if you go and you sign up for emails from us, or you follow me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook at Ryan Michler, that's usually where I'll announce these things, and they sell out within a couple of days typically. So make sure you're following on the socials. That's important.
And give everybody like what this father-son event is. There like just a synopsis you can give us real quick on that?
Yeah. So the whole thing is designed to challenge men and their sons. And I'm using that term a little loosely because it's whether it's your biological son or adopted son or your nephew. We've had uncles bring their nephews. We've had brothers bring their younger brother, but it's a father figure type role and a son type role. And the whole goal is to push both of you physically, mentally, emotionally, and then give you as the father or father figure the tools that you need to usher your young man into manhood, into masculinity, to help harness all the good that can come from you as a boy, learning how to be the man that people need you to be, that you want to be. And so we go through a series of tests and challenges and struggles and conversations and lessons. And it's a rite of passage of sorts for young men between the ages of 8 to 13. And it's very, very transformative for both the father and the son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll bet that's super impactful. I'd love to do an event like that. Of course, I've only got daughters, but I'm sure there's something out there with.
We've been thinking about the dynamic with a daughter would certainly change.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's some logistics there, some of the dynamics that we need to change because, if I have my boy at a father-son event with 20 other fathers and their sons, I'm not going to probably be too concerned with that. But if my daughter was there with 20 other men, that would be something that would be a concern.
I wouldn't do it.
Right. So, right. And I don't think a lot of fathers would, rightfully so. So there would I've been thinking about that, and I'm just rambling at this point, but there would have to be some logistical changes. But that is something that I have my eye on, is some sort of father-daughter event.
Yeah.
Similar to what we do with the boys.
That'd be cool, man. I'd come out and see you in Maine.
Yeah. Yeah, man. We'd love to have you.
I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time. So, I commend you on your platform. Your messaging, I think, is important. It's critical. It's one of those things that's been missing out there in society. And just be unashamedly proud to be masculine and be a man, and it's not something that should be frowned on. And I appreciate that vision, and I think a lot of people would benefit from it. So while we're still recording, you open to coming on the show again in the future?
Yeah, anytime. You just you let me know and we'll make it happen.
I like to get that live, right?
Yeah, well, good. Now you can hold me to it.
Ryan, I wanna keep track of your hunting season too, man. And like I said, if you ever want to come out to Idaho and chase some screaming elk, let me know. Bring your boy out, and we'll get it done.
Yeah, I would love to do that. So let's
Sounds
make it happen.
good. Thanks again, and
all right.
Take care, brother.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Talk
Talk
soon.
soon. Bye-bye.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.